Good morning again. So good to see you all again. This church is full of surprises and full of talented people. Whoever has done this, wow. And I hear that there will be a build-up every week, so you don't want to miss every week. I'm not so sure. And you see, the worst part of it is whatever the build-up is the same one. So I don't even know which way it is going to come up next. But today, we are zeroing in on faith. And it is exciting that we all have faith. Faith in what? I don't know. But we all have faith. We believe in something. And when we go through difficult times in life, I often hear people say, have faith. Have faith. And scripture is not that very explicit in explaining what faith is. And all along, I always thought that Hebrews 11 defines what faith is. But it is only after spending some time again in preparation for this service that I realized that, hang on, Hebrews chapter 11 from verse 1 to 3 is not a definition of faith, but it is a description of faith. And from verse 4 to the end, it is now a demonstration of faith. So today, I just want to zero in on the description of faith. So turn with me to Hebrews chapter 11, and we just want to read verse 1 to 3. Hebrews chapter 11, from verse 1 to 3. And the word of God says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for, and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen is not made out of what was visible. Now, faith is being absolutely certain that what we believe in is true, and that what we expect will come. It is being absolutely certain that what I believe in is true, and what I hope for or what I expect to come will definitely come. And if I may perhaps use as an example, if you find someone who believes in something which is wrong, and they are so certain it is true, it is very difficult to convince those people. And the classic example is always when we were young. When we were warned, when we thought we were in love, and we were warned, hey, this road that you are taking, it will end. And we were so sure. We had faith. We were so dead sure that we will live happily ever what? Ever after. That's a dangerous faith. But the faith that I'm talking about is being so sure that what God says is true, and what God desires of me is so true. So this faith is a faith with a hope that looks forward. It is a hope that is looking so forward. And it is this faith which brings an assurance that what God has promised in the future will certainly come. Now, our hope is based on a conviction, an unshakable conviction in God's way. As I said, faith is such a complicated thing, but you realize that faith is the greatest power in the world. When people believe and have faith in something, it is the greatest power. And I think the extremists demonstrate their wrong faith. If you look at what happens in the Islamic world, how they believe in strapping themselves with bombs, it's based on a faith that if I blast this church, I've got an automatic entry into the presence of Allah. That is, therefore, it is based on that conviction. But our conviction is in something greater and bigger. Our conviction is in a God who created this universe. Our faith is based in a God who sent his Son to die for us. In a God who desires to bring life where there is dryness. You know, when you look at this setup here, in the midst of the brown and the dry that you see, there is hope and there is faith that there is life. If you look close, there is demonstration of a bit of green and a bit of life and a bit of life, that it is this faith that says, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the consequences might be, I have a faith in a God who will come through. This is why it is a description of faith in the first 3 verses. But if you then read from verse 4, it is demonstrated in so many ways. Ways that we see Enoch believing God and walking with God, Elijah, Abel, so many people demonstrating this faith. Now, when we talk of this faith, it is not a faith of blind optimism or a manufactured, you know how we manufacture the hope so. You know when someone, you don't believe in someone and they promise you heaven on earth, you say, we hope so. Yeah, we hope so. You don't, that's not the kind of faith I'm talking about. I'm talking of a faith which is confidence in the obedience of God's word in spite of the circumstances, in spite of the consequences that come. And this faith operates very simple. It's simple. God speaks, okay? And we hear his word. And when we hear his word, we act upon his word. That's the faith I'm talking about. A faith in a God who speaks and we hear. And when we hear, we act upon that word. That is the faith that we have. We trust in God's word. And when we trust in God's word, we then act on that word, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the consequences are. It is that act of obedience. Now, circumstances may be very impossible. Very impossible. And if you read, as I said, if you read verse 9, it says, by faith, he made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign land. He lived in tents, and as did Isaac and Jacob. A faith that called Abraham from his own place, from his own comfort zone, into a place that was not comfortable. Circumstances that we live in may be very impossible. Very impossible. I look at our Zimbabwean situation and look at what we've gone through. What we have overcome, when you tell it to someone outside this country, it's impossible. What we have overcome, even during this pandemic, what we have overcome is mind-blowing. The circumstances might be very impossible, but our faith calls us. It is by faith that you are seated in this room. It is by faith that you strongly convince yourself that I'm not going to contract this COVID. It is by faith that you look at me, I'm speaking to you, no mask, and you're seated looking at me, no mask. That is the faith that we're talking about. The faith that believes in a God. And this faith is then summarized in 3 words. Summarized in 3 words. Substance, evidence, and witness. When we talk of the substance, we are saying the word means to stand under or to support. Faith to a Christian is what a foundation is to a house. It is that substance, that we have this faith, that we can stand on the finished work of Christ. We can stand on what Christ has given us. It gives us the confidence and the assurance that whatever comes, we stand on the word that says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. We stand on the word that if I'm sick, he says, I am your healer. We stand on the word that if you are brokenhearted, it says, God is closer to those that are brokenhearted. We stand on the faith that out of the depths, I can cry out to a God who is my refuge. We know that when circumstances are against us, we stand on this word that says, you are my refuge. We stand on this word that says, though I am weak, I am strong. We stand on this fact that says, his grace is sufficient for me. That is the substance of our faith. That is the substance of our faith. And not only is it substance, it is evidence. Now, when we talk of evidence, we are talking of conviction. An inward conviction from God that says what he promised, he will perform. You know, I love God. What he promised, he will what? He will perform. But the challenge that I have with myself is when I know of God's promise and I want to speed it up. I know God has promised me he will do something, but I want to what? To speed it up. You know, it's like promising a child, oh no, and we give it. My son dreams of flying. Now, when he dreams of flying, I say to him, don't worry, my boy. This coming year will make you fly. And to him, the promise of next year, didn't sing, is the promise of flight. Every single day he says, Daddy, can we go to fly? Then we don't go and fly. No, my boy is gonna no, let's go to fly. Last night we tried to convince each other. It's now in the middle of the day, let's go and fly. There's COVID, Daddy, let's go. To him, he wants to fly, and he wants to fly what? Now. And during the day, made a mistake. I said, let's drive to town. And he saw the setup of the lunar park. And he leaps out, still, and he remembers what he wrote on last week. And I said, look, there are still trucks, they are offloading. We get home, Daddy, let's go, they are finished. No, Daddy, let's go, they are finished offloading. They are finished. To him, nothing makes sense. He's already seeing himself enjoying that. Now that's faith. That's the faith here. So we drive past in the morning and I said, happy days. I said, do you see they are still in trucks? But he says, when we finish church, they'll be done of work. That's to him faith. To him, what Daddy has promised is true. And that's the kind of faith we have in our God. That whatever God has promised us, he will fulfill. In spite of the circumstances, in spite of the consequences, what our God has promised, he will fulfill. Now, this faith requires patience. You know, just waiting to know what God has promised. When you see a beautiful picture of what God, you know what, I cannot wait for the last piece to be put here. I'm excited for the last piece, for that's what I'm looking for. But you might say, what is it? You know, I know, I've seen it. And I've been shown this is it, and I can't wait with the excitement. But the patience, it's coming in week 1. I'm not even so sure. Maybe the 5th week, the agony of waiting. I wish I could fast forward the days. You know that anxious moment when you wait for something exciting. What God has promised, he will fulfill. So we have that aspect in us, that aspect of our faith that waits on him. And the last aspect is that of weakness. It is the aspect of weakness. And in this weakness, what we are talking about is a good report, obtaining a good report. Faith is a very practical thing. Very practical thing. That's why James says, without works, your faith is what? Is dead. Faith is practical. Faith is demonstrated. Our faith enables us to understand what God does. It enables us to see what others cannot see. It enables us to do what others cannot do. Now, as the couple that's doing this was driving off from here, the missus then says, let's drive to the pass. I want to go and get one piece there. And the husband says, you're crazy. What are you for? And they go and take those, I don't know what that thing is called. You know, those sticks. And the gentleman says, these are just sticks. And the missus says, I have a vision. I have a vision. I see beauty in that. If faith enables us to see what others cannot see. Before that thing was chucked there, it was just sticks. But can you say there's sticks here? They add to that beauty. It is that component of our faith that enables us to see what others cannot see. It is that aspect that enables us to witness the potential in what others are not seeing. I think this is why I'm not in business. And those that you know, the guys that are in business, they see potential where there's no what? Potential. Imagine the guys who were making masks. The mask business, I think, wasn't thriving. But they held on, they're making millions and millions, if not billions of dollars. How does this one? How does that fit? So faith enables us to see what others are not seeing. It enables us to do what others are not doing. And how does God then do this? It is by faith that God speaks to us. And when He speaks to us through His word, what does the word do? It stirs us in many ways. I love the component of faith. It stirs us in many ways. And how we are stirred by God in many ways, it should be able to give us the hope that we are stirred differently. You cannot even start to ask me to come and do this. You will not like this stage. But there are those that are stirred to put this beauty. There are those that are stirred to play. I admire those that are. How are you strumming that thing, and how are you even singing? And I have no idea how Zikama is strumming there. How he's using everything. He's stirred that way. But give me the podium and the pulpit. Now we're talking to you. Now we are stirred different. And that is the evidence that God speaks to each and every one of us in a different way. Not only are we stirred differently, we then obey what God says. Faith is that conviction that solely is anchored on obedience to God. An obedience that says, when God says move, you move. You know, sometimes when I reflect, I feel pity for my wife. The places she's been by faith. When I come home and I say, I have the conviction that God is taking us this direction. Oh my word, we pack a day. Off we go. I have the faith that we're going this direction. We've been places. And who knows, God might take us even further places based on this simple aspect. He speaks, we hear, we trust, and we act. Simple. God speaks, you hear, you trust, and you what? You act. How we see those that are in business still stocking paint, I have no idea. But they hear, they trust, and they what? Act. Every one of us, when you hear something with such conviction, you act upon it. And they go with it. And I love this aspect, which is the aspect that I want to end with. It says, by faith, we understand that the universe was formed by God. The belief in who created this world is anchored in our faith. It is by faith that we believe that God made the mountains, that God made the seas. And it is a faith that He made them out of nothing. God has the power to create out of nothing. I guess this is why this hymnal was said as an act of faith, as a demonstration of faith. That's why that great hymn was saying to demonstrate the beauty of this film. Oh Lord my God, when I'm in awesome wonder, consider all thy ways thy hands have made. I see the stars, I hear the mighty thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. It is by faith that you created. It is by faith that you created you and me. And it is in that conviction that faith holds on to the future in the present, in the midst of the present. It is that faith which holds on to the unseen amidst the scene. We see a brighter Zimbabwe, but the scene now is chaotic. We see a better future, but the present doesn't look like that. It is by